looking for one of those creams that eliminate ingrown hairs after shaving. Imagine how much time you'd save when you don't have to worry about, self-maintenance for twice or thrice as long as you usually do. By self-maintenance, of course, I mean shaving. I spend about 30 seconds or so every 3 days shaving to prevent my stash from growing to awkward proportions. I've been shaving my face since I was 14 years old, on the off chance that my heart continues to operate at the absolutely livid age of 70. I will have wasted a handful of infants' lifetimes, keeping my face as clean as their fresh, insignificantly soft, infantile bottoms. 70 years of age minus 14 years of non-shavage is equal to 56 years, which is in turn equal to 20,454 days. Now, 20,454 days divided by 3 is equal to 6,818 days, wherein one devotes 30 seconds to shaving. 6,818 days multiplied by 30 is equal to 204,540 seconds spent shaving between the ages of 14 and 70. Now, 204,540 seconds is equal to 56.8 hours. And that's spent shaving from puberty to a wrinklier version of childhood, considering the excretory incontinence, afternoon naps, and being spoon-fed every now and then. Let's assume that buying this shaving cream will have the duration of shaving that you ever have to do. That's 28.4 hours. Imagine the things that I could have achieved within those 28.4 hours. I could have spent that amount of time doing something seemingly sparse but truthfully and painfully mundane, like witnessing the sun rise with friends after staying up for the said 28.4 hours. As the sun god Ra would rise high enough to catch a slight glimpse of us, I'd think of a cute, yet ultimately inane thought out loud, like, I wonder if the sun rises because he enjoys observing our lives. Everyone would laugh, some would giggle, especially my friend Taran. My cutely idiotic statement would reinforce the depth of my inherent likability to the point that it would allow her to feel comfortable enough with me to initiate actions such as resting on my shoulder, lying down on my lap, sleeping on my bed, whilst I wrapped myself in a sleeping bag on the floor later that morning. Little does anyone know, I've consciously planted a subtle, seemingly inconsequential idea in Taran's mind. Of course, we all know that it is anything but that. Taran. She's the smart, light-heartedly vivacious brunette with dark eyes, dark skin, dark hair, and wonderfully sharp shoulder blades who I've subconsciously been attracted to since I first met her in one of my first filmmaking gigs 2 months before that sunrise. This simple idea, this seed, will have established the grounds for her inherent attraction towards me as a best friend and even a possible lover. As we spend more days and nights, especially nights, drinking green tea together, having debates about movies and societal issues, intently absorbing the content of interesting behavioral biology lectures by Stanford professor Robert Sapolsky on YouTube whilst she spooned me on the far edge of my bed, which conveniently lay against a wall, I would begin to subconsciously realize that I had underestimated my potential emotional attachment to this woman. We'd not say anything to each other in this position, and I'd slowly be falling in love with all the things that made her who she was, and all the things that didn't. A season passes by, and the emotional tension caused by a respective apprehension to admit that horrible, saccharine feeling for each other breaks in the form of a confession which placed our friendship on the balance. I would prepare for disappointment so readily that the blank noise which followed the final, fatalistically delivered word of admission went unnoticed for a minute or two. We'd find our bodies slowly gravitating towards each other. Our lips would touch. From then on, I was hers to destroy. I would be happy. Oh, I would be so happy. And it would be amazing. I would marvel at the overwhelming ecstasy provided by this newfound emotion. I would perceive and delineate the meaning, the implication of this discovery with the ardor and wonder of a child witnessing the variability of color for the very first time as he opens the flap of a boxed package of colored pencils gifted to him by his parents simply because he existed. She would be my universe, and I hers. Then irony would strike, and our attempts to consolidate and affirm what we had would ultimately work against us. Dealing with the burdens of a label would stretch us to the social limit. I would no longer need anyone's approval but hers, and she would no longer have to fear loneliness and ennui alongside me. But this in itself still had its consequences. We'd lose our ability to conceive the beauty of what we once had, that forgotten memory of unadulterated happiness and contentment. Our debates turned into arguments, their content degraded from the metaphysical to the pathetically material. I didn't wash the dishes. She forgot to feed the dog. I arrived home later than I promised. I started smoking again. She would too, albeit in her own time. The sort of time which just began to sustain its own growth from then. She'd impede me. She'd remind me of the sacrifices I had to make for, quote-unquote, us, for our future, which had yet to exist. A future that I grew increasingly detached from as time with her passed. I'd begin to see my faults in this girl I used to love, and she'd see the same in me. Her faults, I mean. I'd attribute the byproducts of my inadequacy to her condition as my lover. We'd come to realize and admit the horribly painful truth of our strained bond, as she would hug me at the doorstep of what used to be our flat complex. We'd subconsciously agree, solemnly, to never see each other again. I'd inherently know what destroyed us, for I'd be too much of a coward to define those debilitating devils for myself. I would slowly die on the inside from then, fearing and consequently avoiding any opportunity which I would ultimately define as temporary happiness. I would be exactly as I am now, just slightly more miserable. Okay. I suppose that's a no for shaving cream then.